Paula, can you hear me? It's Jonathan. I can't hear you if you're talking because it looks like you guys are muted.
There we go.
All right.
That works.
Okay, we're back on. Okay, we have approval of agenda. Yes,
It's the agenda, the minutes, we're not ready.
minutes are not ready, so that's approval of the minutes. All right, sent under separate cover. So we don't have minutes tonight to approve?
No.
Okay, we'll move on then. Public comment, is it?
Still need to vote on the agenda.
Okay, let's go back the bus up. Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda, please?
I'll move motion approved of the agenda, striking the number 5 approval of minutes.
And do we have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Any abstain? That is approved. All right, we go on to public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to present? Yes, Mr. Wolf. We don't have a microphone over there. We need to have it. Here we go.
Dan.
And we have it. All right, would you please state your,
Second.
there you go. Would you please state your name and your address?
Richard Wolf. I put my address, anybody wants it.
Okay,
ask.
good.
I put a copy of,
You are a resident of the Dalles.
yeah,
Got it.
class of 72.
Okay, you've got it. You've got the floor.
I just want to announce this may be an 1868 brick. I have a lot of them. I have the whole Tony's building,
Oh, wow.
and I also have the glue lamps. And hopefully the project managers can figure out a way to utilize it, or maybe an overlay or a pickleball court somewhere.
Oh,
I thought you would like that.
yeah.
But I have them. These were made handmade. The same era of Adobe homes.
Wow.
Indians were making Adobe homes, and
Approximately how many bricks do you have?
36,000.
Oh,
Enough to go from the top of, I would guess, Federal Street to the Wilson Clark Railroad, over the road. Maybe not the whole thing, but it would leave room for other things. But no. Pavers.
good.
I would just like everybody to keep that in mind. I want it out there. I've been letting people know, and I felt that all of you should know that I do have those, and what to do with them right now.
Do you
My
have
home
do you
city
have a
comes
place
first.
to store them? That's a lot of bricks.
I covered the cost on everything so far, and it's in reserve for my community, the Dalles, Oregon.
Well,
And I
of
just
course,
want to let you all know that's
If-
where we're at.
if they can be utilized.
You're not
in
going
a-
to be able to play pickleball on it, but if you, thank you for your time.
Knowing that, if there's a project that we need bricks, especially historic, maybe we can incorporate these bricks back into that project. No, oh, all right.
Blue lamps do $12,000 each. 50-foot long.
Okay.
40 inch deep. And they're 8 inches wide. Columns are are still attached on the building. So
Right.
they could be stood on poles. And its permanent shade system could be utilized. An overlay would go.
It seems like Mr. Wolf's not getting picked up on the microphone.
Yeah, the
If I could
mic,
please, yeah, just please trouble any comments to be put into the microphone so we have an accurate reflection for the minutes. I'd appreciate it.
Where does he?
he's on Zoom.
Okay. Check. Gas money order.
Perfect. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Where was I?
You're-
Yes. They're available. They're not going to be available for a long time. There may be an option to get them. I did what I could to save them, and it had to be immediate. And they're in a safe place.
Good. Well, thank you very much. All right. Other public comments? I don't see anyone else in the audience. So we will go ahead and move on to action items. 7A is an urban renewal plan work session and board guidance for a historical review, maximum indebtedness update, summary report examples, goals and objectives. Who's taking that?
I'm taking that.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you very much.
you bet.
Chair, appreciate the flexibility tonight. Dan Spots. Is it working?
Nope, there it is.
There it is. Dan Spots, Economic Development Officer, City of the Dalles. We're working okay? Speak up. Can you all hear me?
Well, Jonathan, can you hear Dan?
Loud and clear, Dan. You're
All
just
right.
fine.
Okay. Very good. So a lot of this tonight is going to be history of the agency. And I've been doing a lot of file research, going off of personal memory, talking with folks, going through old files. Appreciate former Mayor Lawrence being here to throw something at me if I go straight from your memory also. The staff report contains a summary of basically the 30-year history of the agency, which has been captured through a series of amendments and other measures through the years. Really like to talk about some of the accomplishments that the agency has done through the years. I've spoken with people who've moved into the area recently and ask about the agency and say, well, what have you ever done? I really don't see anything or very little. And I don't know that we often connect past investments with things that are very visible that we continue to use today. A lot of the purpose tonight is not only to look back, but also to look forward. Reminder that we reach maximum indebtedness. That is basically the 2010 bond measure is paid off at that point in 2029. The agency determined in the 10th Amendment some years back that there would not be an ending date per se for the agency, but rather the agency or the district would end when that bond was paid off. And right now we're projecting that to be 2029. We have roughly $6 million, and that is a number that we're waiting on the final audit from City and Urban Renewal Agency to pin that down. Roughly $6 million to invest between now and 2029. So that's going to be a question for a little bit later in one of these series, but purpose tonight is to look back at what we've done and be thinking about where we should go. In the packet, you'll see a series of bullets on the second page following the introduction. I'd like to focus, if we could, and keep you thinking about the first 3 bullets only. Has the Urban Renewal Agency achieved its purpose? What problems was it designed to address? Have those problems been resolved? Do the goals and objectives still reflect guidance of the agency board? And those goals and objectives are included in the packet. We don't really need to, and I don't think we'll have time to go into the remaining bullets tonight. Again, this is really to set the course for thinking of those as we go forward. What I'd like to do for the members who are not present tonight, send out an email, try to summarize some of the discussion tonight along with the minutes, and invite individual members to come and meet with me. So if there are any questions or something like that, that we can address that are not answered and do not come across in the recording or whatever, so we can keep the continuity and go into the December meeting to see if we can plug away at the next phase of this. So with that, I'm going to launch into an historical overview, and I won't be reading word for word. And I just got a text from Darcy. Hang on just a second. She is trying to log in. So no luck. Yeah. Josh, can I ask you to check? Okay. So historical overview. And again, not word for word, but just a few highlights on this. The agency basically established in 1990. The council recognized blighted areas, and that's a governing issue with urban renewal. It's designed to address blight fundamentally, and cites the ORS statute. In doing so, the council established goals and objectives for the agency and an urban renewal district of the same name. That is the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal District. Original size of the district was 628 acres, 93% of which was inside city limits, remaining 7% in Wasco County. That's an important point because it gets into one of the initial amendments, specifically in reference to voter approved Measure 5. There was some other basic language there that's included in the historical overview. But to go into the amendments at this point, and before I do so, I wanted to talk about the distinction between minor amendments, major amendments, major changes, substantial amendments, and council approved amendments. There are three different categories there. Minor changes to the urban renewal plan can add or drop projects. It can clarify language. It can change project scope as long as those changes don't alter the plan's goals and objectives. So the goals and objectives have a lot greater longevity than specific projects. Substantial amendments expand the district boundaries and increase the maximum indebtedness. Those amendments can be proposed by the agency board, but they need to be approved by the city council. Minor amendments can be accomplished by the board as it stands. And then finally, council approved amendments, and these actually change the goals and objectives. Those are made by the council. So the board, I think, can advise on those, but the decision is up to the council to change the goals and objectives. And I bring that up and focus on it here because those 3 points I just mentioned: has the agency achieved its purpose? What problems was it designed to address? Have those been resolved? Do the goals and objectives still reflect guidance of the agency board? These goals and objectives go back a number of years now. So with that, I'm going to go and just hit some highlights of the different amendments and some of the things that have been accomplished, because there's a series of projects that come into this partway down the amendments. And those are the ones where we can really go about revising this plan, which has not been significantly changed since 2010. Some of these projects have been accomplished a long time back. So the first amendment very early on simply established that no bonded debt would be incurred beyond 2012, 2013, except through a substantial amendment, and a substantial amendment was made in 2010. First substantial amendment occurred in 1993, and this goes back to Measure 5. And in your packet, you'll see a couple of different maps. The original boundary extended and included part of the property that was in District 9. Remind a kind of a history course on the Dalles. We had one school district up until the 1940s or 50s, I believe. And District 9 split off, and we became two districts, District 9 and District 12. Eventually, they merged again with loss of tax base in District 9 when the aluminum plant closed down. But in the interim, and when this plan was established in 1990, we had two districts. An unintended consequence of Measure 5 was to establish a discrepancy in the way taxes were collected between the two districts, 9 and 12, a 7-fold discrepancy. And I am not versed on the fine details of that, but it was sufficient to cause a significant change. And that was that first substantial amendment in the Second Amendment. That removed all of the urban renewal district that had been in District 9. So when we started to do some initial research on this a couple of months ago, rather, noticed that West 2nd Street large segment of West Second Street, which would seem to be prime for urban renewal work. There's a lot of semi-vacant industrial land, good properties out there that were included in the original plan and were deleted. Well, why? Well, that's the reason. Because that was in District 9 and needed to be pulled out to address that discrepancy arising from Measure 5. So that was the second amendment. Major change there, a substantial change. Third amendment, simply clarifying some language on proposed projects, which you can do with a minor amendment. The fourth amendment, another substantial one, established a maximum debt limit to comply with Oregon constitutional changes approved by voters, Measure 50, approved in 1997. That was very short-lived because there was a move to disband urban renewal entirely. It was a citizens group that did not like the way it was going. I think one of the challenges was the question as to whether there was this urban renewal was leading to a significant increase in tax valuation. A lot of the focus on urban renewal early on was talking about fundamental infrastructure, some other areas, even going into education and workforce training. Those were some of the initial goals for urban renewal. And through the challenge to that, the agency responded to that by revisiting some of the fundamentals of what needed to be accomplished. And those were addressed in the Fifth Amendment. Another substantial amendment adopted in 1998 responded to that attempt to disband the agency. There was actually a mediation agreement, and we have a copy of that agreement. It reduced the size of the district, removing 238 acres from the original 628, and established the city council as the agency board. Up until then, the authority had been vested, much as it is now, in this board. And so the Fifth Amendment turned that over to the city council, and it stayed that way for quite some time. The city council would meet as a council. It would adjourn and meet as an agency board and reconvene sometimes the city council. The Sixth Amendment, another substantial amendment, revised the project list and sought to ensure project compliance with plan criteria, reduced the amount of maximum debt to 14 million, and that number was later increased to 29 million in the 10th Amendment. And it outlined a new list of urban renewal projects. That list replaced an earlier list in the Fourth Amendment. I think your packet has the Fourth Amendment list in there. It's irrelevant. It was tossed out with the Sixth Amendment. I want to go into these projects because here we're talking about some of the things that actually got done and maybe that still need to be done. Downtown street improvements back in 2002. Second Street looked much like Third Street does now. It did not have period lighting. It didn't have the brickwork. Sidewalks needed repair. There were infrastructure issues that were badly needed at that point. And so there was a complete reconstruction of Second Street downtown. That was an urban renewal project. There were additional funds that go into it. And as a later phase of this series of studies, we want to try to capture as many of those other funds as possible. Because when we talk about urban renewal, it's not only the increase in tax base that has benefited, but also what other funds was urban renewal able to leverage, state, federal funds, in addition to private investment. It's difficult to capture some of these because we don't have all the documentation going back 30 years. We're tracking it down. So downtown streetscape improvements, that was 2002. Some of the city funds went into that too. Downtown riverfront access, the original language included a boat dock near the old pier. History course, there used to be a massive pier at the Dalles. It was a large industrial pier prior to construction of the freeway, when a lot more river commerce depended upon, commerce depended upon the river. We didn't have the freeway as a major transportation corridor. And when that pier was deconstructed, memory serves, 1980s, I think.
Seems like 70s, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, I remember
somewhere in
seeing
that.
it. But they left the old piers in place, and just a historical footnote, that's pretty important because that allowed us to go ahead and build the maritime terminal later and possibly other future improvements. The old piers are still in place. You did not get quite into the regulatory issue by having those old piers still in the ground. So downtown river access, old dock near the old pier. That was accomplished. So Union Street, Urban Renewal had a role in this. The Union Street underpass, portal, and the maritime terminal. Urban Renewal funding went into that. It was a total for the undercrossing alone, if my figure is correct, it was around 6 million, including about 2.25 million in state and federal funds. And those are some of the numbers that we want to be able to capture later on in this and confirm them. And again, identify ways that Urban Renewal has leveraged other funding. Grain elevator demolition.
Back up. When was that approximately? The dock?
The dock was, let's see, the portal was 2003, Maritime Terminal 2012. 2012. Grain elevator demolition, the old historic grain elevator coincidentally burned in a fire in 1999. The timing was propitious. Urban Renewal purchased the property, paid for the cleanup following the fire, established land base to expand the sewer treatment plant and Lewis and Clark State Park. Project complete. Commodore building redevelopment. This is an ongoing saga. Renovations were completed back in 2002 or 3. The agreement was in 2001. And we still have an outstanding loan on this one, about 282,000. It is due in 2026, and we are tracking that one. Commodore Penny's Block redevelopment. Some of these projects merged with others. In this case, Project 5 was later combined with Project 6. The original idea was to demolish the Penny's building, use that space and the parking lot next to it to build a downtown parking structure. That one went by the wayside eventually. And the downtown surface parking lots are still an active project. We are pursuing some other possibilities in that regard. Civic Auditorium remodel and reconstruction. We have an expert on that in the audience tonight. Pretty close to getting it done. Audio, a few other improvements needed, but
3 things need to be done.
Wait.
Wasn't until I had them loud. Steve Lawrence, 2017 View Court. The only 3 things that are left to be done are to upgrade the sound and lighting for the theater, and the balcony needs to be reconstructed. Other than that, everything has been done in the Civic Auditorium, and Urban Renewal gave about $1.3 million over time. When I got involved, it was $800,000 in 2010 that they had given for the reconstruction, and then they gave another $300,000 and $30,000 to design what ended up being the refurbishment of the theater. The rest of it's been separate funding and grants from the lottery, et cetera.
I get those numbers from you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. When I walked into the Civic Auditorium in about 1992, you go into the fireside room, and I don't think there was a floor there. We looked down and there was some water flowing down in the basement. And when it rained, there were 2 little rivers that went down the auditorium aisles. It was slated for demolition. So that has been one Urban Renewal, one of many important funding sources, but a big one. That's been a success. Mill Creek Bridge reconstruction. Mill Creek Bridge, this is just past Trevitt, by the just west of the big Victorian there at the foot of Trevitt. That bridge was sad shape to repair. All the lights were busted. The asphalt was gone. The railings were broken out. All of those railings are new. They were replaced. Lights were new. They were replaced. That's a completed project, Urban Renewal. Mill Creek Greenway property acquisition. Ongoing, we're still reserving $300,000 for the Parks District to complete that project. Gateway, West 2nd Street. Much of this has been done, but much is still to be accomplished. There are some confusing intersections, particularly as we get out toward Weber on that one. The Armory property, Urban Renewal's contribution there was to demolish the former Armory, and I believe that's accurate that the Urban Renewal paid for that demolition. It did pay for demolition of a project of a building nearby, and that's the old Public Works building. So they're two different parcels, very close to each other, separated, as I recall, by Danny's. I'll double check that. This was a 30-year project trying to move that armory. It was an old Quonset hut that was on county-owned property on Weber, and eventually the college was able to strike a deal with the city and the county and the National Guard to provide a 99-year lease to the National Guard to move the armory up onto college property. That allowed the county to regain site control of the old armory property. And now, of course, we're waiting to see what happens with Kramer Field on that one. So the county is intentionally, not to speak for the county, but I think the thinking is to wait and see what happens with Kramer. But that's a prime development area. And in the meantime, Public Works went out to its current location, and David Griffith built his dealership there. I've asked David to tell me how much money he put into that, and he's thinking about that. I'd love to be able to put that number into a report, because that is added value resulted from urban renewal. Thompson Park sidewalk, that's one that's complete. That's the rock wall that leads along West 2nd Street and along Cherry Heights. And then property rehabilitation grant and loan fund program. We're not doing loans right now, but we have. The Sunshine Mill was a loan that was fully paid off. The Sunshine Mill at one time was a very large empty wheat flour mill, and it was covered with flour on the inside and derelict. It had been derelict for years and years and years. Chain link fence, and now you look at the Sunshine. There's another success story, urban renewal. So and they continue to do progress today. In fact, I can give an update on that on the incentive program a little bit later on. So that all was the Sixth Amendment. A lot took place there, and a lot of these projects, in fact, all of these projects, are still in the current urban renewal plan, even though they've been accomplished, many of them. So one of the things we hope to do at the end of the day here in a few months is to revise all of that and come out with a new plan. Maybe ask the question, are there other projects we should accomplish? In fact, we really need to, because if we're going to invest those remaining funds between now and 2029, let's be thinking of what we need to do with that money. Seventh Amendment, parking lot First and Court. Eighth Amendment, that's the Sunshine Mill. So that became Project 14. That added as a project. Ninth Amendment added some additional property to that project, Union Pacific Railroad and ODOT. 10th Amendment was the last major amendment in 2009, and that's the one that we're still working off of today. This devised the plan, which is almost entirely what you see now as the urban renewal plan. The cover page has been updated with a 1993 date. We started to revise it, did some minor edits to it, but this plan is still very much what we had from 2010. So that's kind of a driver here, because new projects need to be reflected in the plan. That's the state statute. We've got some things going on that kind of sort of fold into some of the existing projects, but it would be nice to have tighter language nailing them down. So that's again an issue that we can be thinking about as we go forward on this one. The 10th Amendment increased maximum debt from 14 million up to 29 million, and added some projects: Mill Creek Greenway, East Gateway Brewery grade reconstruction. That's the roundabout by the Sunshine Mill. Third Place Street improvements. So that was the big one most recently. The 11th Amendment added the skateboard park, the 12th Granada block, which again is one of those continuing sagas, and we're seeing some progress now on that. The original vision for that changed significantly and included the blue building and included the Granada, some additional work. Now we are seeing that turned over to private development. Todd Carpenter in particular has purchased 2 of the 3 properties there, and we're closing in on the latest and last deadline for him was the 7th Amendment to his agreement, DDA. That I believe is continuing until March, and he is on schedule. You see that he has completed the stucco on the outside of his building. That's going to be an event center. 13th Amendment, this was council approved. So this, and again, at this point, if I'm right in my sequence here, the council was still the Urban Renewal Board at this point. So this was a council approved goal and increased the value of the, it was a minor amendment, adding a new goal of increasing value of properties within the district, enhancing opportunities for nonprofit organizations to participate in property rehab and loan grant funding. So this allowed things like investment in the Elks Lodge building, which became a nonprofit, the Neon Sign Museum. Speaking of other success stories, that's been another big one. 14th Street Amendment added Thompson Park Pool as an urban renewal project, slide, climbing wall, shade, so it's not the pool itself, but some amendments associated with that. 15th, redevelop the Elks Lodge as an urban renewal. There we have the Neon Sign Museum. And the 16th, finally, Mill Creek Trail Greenway project of revising the description. So that was a minor amendment. But I hope I've tried to capture a lot of the stuff that we've accomplished through the course of urban renewal with those different amendments and hits. A big change occurred in 2016, and that was when the city council restructured the agency itself and turned it over to the current board. Not all of you members, but the structure that we have today. So keeping in mind that that has kind of evolved through the years. It started out as one thing, went over to the council, went back and forth a couple of times through over the past 30 years. The Urban Renewal Advisory Committee was then eliminated, and it is now the agency board. Stop for questions.
Yeah, I've got one. Brownfield projects and urban development. Are they integrated or separate funding?
They are separate funding. I am the manager for the Brownfield program. That is an EPA funded project. We, the city, the county, and the port formed a coalition and applied for an EPA grant of $600,000 3 years ago. That grant is almost fully expended now. We submitted a proposal 2 weeks ago now to the EPA to replenish that in the amount of $500,000. We're hopeful that it will be replenished. In the meantime, the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District has a $1 million grant they just received that will be spread over 5 counties. So if we receive a replenishment for our grant, we'll have 2 different funding sources. It would be good to maintain local funding. We can focus on the city of the Dalles. There's still a lot of cleanup projects to be done. Long answer to your question, it's EPA, it's not urban renewal.
Got it. The property near Domino's Pizza owned by Jim Stroud.
Stroud,
Was that a brownfield project?
that was brownfield, yes. So not urban renewal.
It was also.
urban renewal. Yeah, the IP program.
Good job on getting that accomplished, because that was a long time, right, Mayor Lawrence? Whew. And it was really a detrimental part of our, that east side of our town started out very, I don't know, it was not the best scene when you came into our city, but over time it developed into where it is today. It's an attractive part with the roundabout and Sunshine Mill and all the developments. So in my opinion, that was money well spent.
I'll be catching up to Jim to see what next steps might be on that now vacant parcel, but it's been a significant improvement, very much so. Yeah,
Okay. Jim yelled at me.
good one.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. So really the next big, unless there are other questions that I can address now on history. So start to go into the question of where do we go from here? And again, goals and objectives need to be approved by the city council, but the review could really and should really start here with this group. And again, I don't need answers right now. It's more to be thinking about this, because this will be a series of things. I want to hit it again December, January. We're talking about doing a major detailed study of accomplishments. Hope to be contracting with Elaine Howard. And we'll have more details on that a little bit later. But right now, to get you thinking, let's go over these goals and objectives. And these are going back to the earlier history of the agency. To make strategic investments of funds and engage in various urban renewal activities which increase the value of properties within the district. Thing to keep in mind is that the sole criterion, increase in tax values. Should we also look at other funds that have been leveraged? Should we look at broader social benefits? And now the focus is on ROI and tax. Not inappropriate. Should it be one of many, one of several, or the sole? To make strategic investments of urban renewal funds so that underused properties can be placed in productive condition and utilized in a manner consistent with the city's comp plan and ordinances. To participate by means of various urban renewal activities, land acquisition and disposition, rehab loans. Again, we're not doing loans right now. We did. Specific opportunities for business, civic, residential, cultural, tourist-related property to be developed, redeveloped, etc., which would encourage and expand development of businesses that produce jobs, increase property values so the area will contribute its fair share to the cost of public services, ensure a more attractive, functional, and economically viable city. It says, or conserve historically significant places and properties. I should think that would mean and, or something like that. To be responsive to the needs and concerns of all people of the city of the Dalles and the details of amending and implementing the urban renewal plan using multiple forms of outreach, town hall meetings, internet, news releases, signs on projects, etc. To encourage the maximum amount of public involvement and citizen participation in the formation and implementation of the urban renewal plan by explaining and discussing details at town hall gatherings, special interest groups, public service organizations, public bodies, the general public, by invitation to agency meetings, by issuing periodic news releases, by cooperating with the print and electronic news media to discuss urban renewal plan and processes, and by use of the internet. Interesting term right at the end of that when this was written. And we could be doing obviously a lot more of all of the above. There was, I think it's safe to say, a lot more interest in urban renewal in the early decade. And I think the danger now is that, again, we forget what has been accomplished. And in a few years' time or less, need to ask ourselves, what do we do? Where do we go from here? When that district expires now, the agency expires. I want to keep that question before you. To provide an adequate amount of property located and designed for off-street parking, including disabled parking in the downtown area, including a plan and program to effectively pay for, manage, and maintain such parking. To create positive linkages among the two sectors of the urban renewal area, downtown and West Gateway. To cooperate, coordinate, and assist in funding with program to improve access and connections from downtown to the riverfront, and to provide facilities such as trails and a public dock to enhance public use of the riverfront. Well, we have a public dock. There's a question. Maybe we need a second one. I don't know. To improve the visual appearance, capacity, and traffic flow of streets that carry the major share of vehicular and pedestrian traffic in areas where development would otherwise be inhibited. To assist property owners in rehabilitation of their buildings and property to the extent that it helps implement the intent of redevelopment goals, policies, and standards, especially where rehab may spur additional redevelopment activity. To install and maintain coordinated street furniture, night lighting, landscaping in areas of maximum pedestrian concentration, including alley rights-of-way in the downtown area. I won't mention the project, but we're thinking of one on that one. In conjunction with specific urban renewal development or redevelopment projects, supplement existing funding sources to construct, install, replace publicly owned utility systems such as water, storm drains, sanitary sewers, where existing facilities are inadequate, undersized, or otherwise substandard. A lot of progress has been made on that one by bringing in different funding, leveraging funding. In the downtown core, be thinking again of the future of the agency. Might there be another district in the offing? And I'm thinking West Side. To leverage the agency's financial resources to the maximum extent possible with other public and private investments and other public and private funding sources, and to install underground utilities in areas of urban renewal projects, including alley rights-of-way in the downtown area. Those are the original goals and outcomes of the plan. So again, any initial comments now, we'd be happy to take, but the main idea is just kind of be setting the stage and have you thinking of these things, because at the end of the day, and that's going to be somewhere around February or March, we would like to have a new plan, basically a heavily revised plan that can help set direction, whether that's culminating in 2029 or whether it's envisioning some new evolution of the agency going forward for maybe another 30 years, who knows what. So it's kind of a watershed moment, as it were. You have a series of attachments. Here, the proposed timeline of what I've been talking about doing over the next few months. Deletions that occurred in 1993 because of Measure 5. The Fourth Amendment project list for reference. Again, that's not relevant now. The Fifth Amendment district boundaries, the debt service schedule, counting down to 2029, the current boundaries. And in the attachment, 2 samples of summary reports. And this is where we would be contracting, most likely with Elaine Howard. She is the eminent authority on urban renewal in the state of Oregon, has done a number of reports, often in concert with Tiberius Solutions, which is doing our annual fiscal analysis. And we're looking at a draft scope of work right now to see what elements we might want to go into that, but that's kind of early yet. Discussion with Elaine that we'll be having to kind of scope that out. Rockwood, you see that in there. Rockwood Gresham is an example of what can be done. Columbia County is kind of the other end of that. It's a very brief report. And we've since come up with 2 or 3 others that are somewhere in between, and we'll probably be bringing different elements of that together into a final scope of work. But in the 10th Amendment, back in, I think it was 2009, now I need to go back over this again, there was a substantial report that accompanied the amendment that captured the history of the agency up until that point, fiscal analysis, and sets the stage for everything that's happened since then. So that report is a much larger document that accompanied the amendment, and the intent would be to come up with another version of that now. More graphically appealing. That one was pretty dry.
You said that we were undergoing a financial audit. Do you know when that's going to be completed?
Read from Angie. I think within early December. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in December.
Yeah.
All right,
I know
thank
she's
you.
closing in on it. It's for the city and for the agency. Tiberius has done some initial analysis already. That's where I'm coming up with a $6 million figure. But I want to be sure that that is fully reconciled with the audit. So I'm not really call it a working target right now.
Well, excellent, excellent report. Any other questions that you might have?
Well, I spoke up some a month ago, and I don't think the other folks had a whole lot to say. And just we're talking about historic and everything. I haven't been that involved in what's going on with the city or the Urban Renewal Agency, but I was around when we got the sales pitch, and that was mostly that the fire district would be glad that this happened because eventually the taxes would be a lot more and it would benefit the fire district long term. And we were kind of like, we don't want to wait. We need the money right now, but we didn't have a choice, you know. And some people grouse because it never went to the voters either. So, you know, it's kind of not been a favorite thing for the people that have a lot to do with the fire district. I think, you know, they see money spent, probably spent on nice things, but money that they needed at the time. And that's, I think, why most of them are like, enough is enough. We want it to sunset. And from my perspective, you know, we were short on money, and maybe not everybody realizes it, but 30 years ago, there was a lot of volunteer firefighters. There isn't anymore. Were we able to add personnel? No, because we didn't have the money. We're finally adding personnel because of Google, mostly. But we still don't have enough personnel. We're not competitive in the market for medical personnel. And, you know, I might have a different opinion as some people, whether we should spend more money. But I keep being told we don't have enough money to be competitive to get paramedics in this town. Now, everybody likes to have a nice town to live in, but I feel that the reason that our last bond passed for apparatus and everything was because of the good public relations that the fire district has with this community. So in a way, the money that we didn't have because of urban renewal and other things, we were able to obtain from the taxpayers because of their support. So thank you very much to the taxpayers. And they also passed the bond when we got the new fire station also. But I know that I run into many, many people that are attached to the county that grouse that the fire district has too much money, and I take exception to that. And we were struggling to try to get our hands on some of the enterprise fund money, and we couldn't. And then right after the fire district got some Google money, the guy with the county was down there saying, I need that money worse than you guys do. We didn't have to give it to him, so we didn't, you know. But I just wanted to give you that perspective. And that's kind of why I'm saying put the money on something that'll increase the tax rolls so that someday you can say promise made, promise kept. It's kind of, and I'm not saying that the taxes won't come in more, but I don't know. I don't know how much it's going to increase. Go ahead.
I think that's the key point that we'd see coming out of that summary report. Exactly what fiscal impact in terms of increased tax value has occurred because of urban renewal. I don't know that we have that number.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly can't say, I don't think one way or the other, that urban renewal has had a net benefit or disadvantage in terms of net tax value. I think it's tax value has increased. Now, was that in proportion to the investments made by the agency? I think that's going to be the key.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to try to cite the investment number off the top of my head, but what has been the increase in value, and is that relative to the investments that have been made? The other question on that one would be the differences that have occurred in district boundaries through time. So there's complexity in trying to answer it, because again, we took District 9 out of that in 1993. The original maximum debt was based on that much larger area.
Yeah.
And the district changed again through the years. So we have to calculate all of that. Those will be some complex calculations. But I hope at the end of the day in that study, we'll be able to come up with a better answer on that one.
Yeah.
What has been the net from that investment?
Well,
In addition to the other leverage funds that you talk about. You know, you think of things like Union Street Portal, wouldn't be there. Second Street, reconstruction, things of that nature. Sunshine Mill. There are a lot of things that most likely, you know, you never know, who knows, but you can certainly point to a direct correlation between urban renewal investment and those projects that are visible today. So it's a good philosophical question.
Well, I haven't been a politician for very long, but, you know, as a member of the board of directors for the fire district, naturally, I'm going to try to focus on enhancing that agency's capabilities. And so I'm probably a tough customer when it comes to saying this project is more important than anything the fire district needs the money for. You follow what I'm saying? It's like, no, I'm not buying that. So, I mean, they might all be worthwhile projects, but coming from my background and everything, I'm a difficult customer when it comes to convincing me that those projects are more important. So just to kind of give you an idea, I mean, I'm just one vote, and I don't expect that I'm going to be a polished enough politician to change the direction of everything, but I'm going to speak up to what I think the priority should be. So
Fairly appropriate, and it's not my job to make those decisions either. That's all of you.
Well,
Just gonna get the information out there.
well, thank you. Thank you for the very comprehensive report. Any other questions before we move on? All right, this summarizes and completes the action items. We're going to go ahead and move on to number 8, staff comments, project updates. I think this is for you, Joshua.
Yeah, I think Dan and I are going to split this one. I did want to mention before we get into this, I wanted to let the agency know that I will be intending to waive the conflict of interest on behalf of the agency for the city attorney's review and dual representation of the city agency IGA that's coming up for the 3rd Street parking lot. It will be at city council this next week on Monday. So it will be an agreement for a new parking lot, and it will be, or ultimately the city attorney will be representing the city as well as the agency. So my intent is to waive the conflict of interest. And I just wanted to bring that up to the agency to see if there was any concerns with any of the members.
This is the parking area currently that's the used car parking next to Sawyer's.
Correct. Yep. And we'll be discussing it on Monday at city council.
Right. Okay.
Hearing none, I think we'll move on to some updates.
All right.
I'll start out with an update of the Tony's building. I think everybody's seen the Tony's building's down. The demo crew finished up. Was it 2 weeks ago now? They had an archaeologist team there last week, and it was a short dig. They ended up not finding too much, if anything, and we will be getting a report on that I can report back to. I have also, we are in the process of receiving some grant funding that was going to, the Oregon Brownfields grant was actually going to assist in some of that cleanup. So we are getting some of the money back. I'm still working with Business Oregon. It's taken quite a while for this draw request to come through. I think it's sitting on 2 months now. So once that comes through, we're going to be recouping just not a lot of money, but some of the money that we put out for this demo. So that's a positive. And it's looking like next week we will have, after the holiday, the demo crew comes back in and we're going to start backfilling that entire site. So it's looking, they're going to take care of that in just a couple days, and we will get the alley back in order and everything cleaned up. So that's what I have, and go on to Dan.
So a few updates on the incentive program. We do have some active commercial grants out there. 315 Federal, the former Dallas Chronicle building, and other businesses before that. It's going to be a grocery store, badly needed in the downtown core. We are investing a commercial grant in that one. There's going to be a commercial kitchen in there, 2 or 3 other businesses located inside of that. That's the Stelzer group that is renovating that structure. There'll also be some sidewalk repairs and parking lot, but primarily on the inside of that building. So look for that one. That's an urban renewal.
You know who the grocery store is going to be run by, or
I'm sorry?
who's going to own the grocery store?
The Stelzers, I believe, are the owners.
Okay. Oh, I thought they were the contractors or something.
No.
Okay.
He'll be doing some of the work, but he's subbing it out, most of it. The Foley building, you have a copy of this. Urban Renewal. That column over here is held in place by a large strap right now. There is some undermining taking place, and we don't want that to happen. So that is an urban renewal project. Moving forward, we are helping with the repair of the column and some ancillary work, the railing, some other improvements on that one. Todd Carpenter on the recreation, the stucco is now on the outside of the building, on track again for March completion and transfer of the property. And finally, the Sunshine Mill, we're closing in on an agreement, a couple of details still to nail down on that one, but this will be interior electrical improvements, some heating, lighting on the east side of the building to increase the capacity there, increase the comfort level for guests on the east side, and then putting a exterior door on the east side of the building. So those projects are all incentive program projects.
Whatever happened with the Mint building, that project?
We continue to be in conversation with the 3 different parties involved in that one. Of course, with Steve with Freebridge and Tim and Tim's partner. They are still facing the dilemma of the sprinkler system that needs to be installed there. And that's a significant cost. So they're working through that. Know that certainly Freebridge hopes to stay there. So we continue that conversation. We just exchanged emails and phone calls with them last week. Nothing definitive to bring forward yet, though.
Excellent. All right, any other things on the staff projects or,
Me.
okay,
We're here.
perfect. Let's move on to 9 then, board member comments or questions. Do we have any? All right, hearing none, let's go on to 10, discussion item. Shouldn't be in there, so we'll cross it off. So I see nothing else except number 11, which is adjournment.
That was a brief discussion item.
All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at, it looks like 6:35.
Thank you all.
Thank you.